I just finished watching Coyote vs. ACME, and honestly, I'm not sure I was ready for how this made me feel. This is one of the most important animated movies of the decade, not because of box office numbers, not because of a viral trailer, but because it very nearly didn't exist at all. Warner Brothers buried it alive for a tax write-off, and only ended up releasing it because of public pressure. And that thing they tried to erase from history turned out to be shockingly good. I've talked about this cancellation story on the channel before. Movies that get frozen and quietly disappear are something I follow pretty closely. But this is only the second time in my life I've seen something actually claw its way back out of lost media territory and reach a screen. And that comeback earns every frame of it. The marketing for this movie is peak Warner Brothers, half-hearted, inconsistent, like even the studio wasn't sure what it was selling. The funny part is that word of mouth ended up being the most effective marketing campaign the film ever got. People told each other about it. That real-world underdog story lines up almost too perfectly with the underdog story baked into the film itself. So I'm here to say it one more time, if it's playing near you, go see it. This is a genuine victory lap for animation, and you don't want to miss it. I'll keep this first half spoiler-free, though you can probably already guess where this is going. There's something I kept thinking about the whole time I was watching. This movie exists right at the moment the entire industry has been leaning harder and harder into safe, mass-produced CGI. Names like Minions, and a whole wave of cookie-cutter family animation, are dominating the box office with formula. And right in the middle of that, a movie built on classic slapstick material, one that respects the original animation logic, chose to go the other direction, and it won. My biggest fear watching the trailers was that this movie would just rehash old Wall E. Coyote gags, now rendered in 3D. It doesn't. It does something much smarter. Every prop, every gadget that shows up comes back later. There's something I kept thinking about the whole time I was watching. This movie exists right at the moment the entire industry has been leaning harder and harder into safe, mass-produced CGI. Names like Minions, and a whole wave of cookie-cutter family animation, are dominating the box office with formula. And right in the middle of that, a movie built on classic slapstick material, one that respects the original animation logic, chose to go the other direction, and it won. Combined with others in increasingly complex ways. You see a magnet glove, a pair of rocket boots, each gets its own gag individually, then a gag using both together. That's what pushes this movie above the rest. It doesn't underestimate its audience, it builds a rule set and actually respects it all the way through. The cast pulls its weight too. The antagonist has real comedic color, the protagonist reads as exactly the kind of underdog trying to do the right thing, and every other archetype gets enough room to land, even though the actual skeleton of the story is, of all things, a courtroom drama. That sounds dry on paper, but the film turns it into a genuinely entertaining ride. Never boxing itself into four courtroom walls the way you'd expect, and here's the part that makes this movie stand out to me, it actually digs into the relationship between Coyote and the Roadrunner, a relationship that, for decades, only ever existed as a chase gag. The film turns it into real emotional weight. Alongside that, there's a parade of Looney Tunes cameos, each one given their own space, none of them feeling shoehorned in. This is unmistakably a Looney Tunes movie, and it understands exactly what that means. There's an interesting layer of satire running underneath it all. The film's content skewers corporate thinking, at the exact moment the studio that made it had tried to erase it entirely. That coincidence adds a layer of meaning the filmmakers probably couldn't have fully planned for. If I had to name one flaw, it's that the motion blur gets a little heavy at times, enough that some crowded scenes with multiple characters lose detail. But that's genuinely the smallest complaint I could find in the entire movie. Wall E. Coyote has always been my favorite Looney Tune, so maybe I'm a little biased here. But fair judgment aside, this is a movie worth supporting, not just for the journey it took to survive, but because on its own merits, it's a genuinely well-crafted piece of work. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with me to the halfway point. Subscribe if you haven't already, for more animation breakdowns. They might not all be this glowing, but I'll always try to dig as deep as I can. Spoiler territory starts here, so consider yourself warned. Coyote and his lawyer lose the case. And I think that's exactly what makes this movie memorable. This isn't a cookie-cutter, defeat the villain, everything's fine now, ending. It's more grounded than that, and because of it, it has more depth. There's a running theme across this whole live-action/animation hybrid genre: cartoon characters are treated as second-class citizens. In Roger Rabbit, toons are seen as lesser. In Happy Time Murders, puppets get the same treatment. Coyote vs. Acme continues that thread, and pushes it even further. The film suggests it's considered acceptable for a cartoon character to be hurt or abused because they can survive it in a way a human couldn't. It's a genuinely dark idea, but that's exactly what gives this old material real weight when it's told with a more serious lens. The plot's foundation is a long-running conspiracy. Acme products are deliberately designed to fail when used to catch cartoon characters, so that the products sold to humans stay flawless. There's a nice detail here. The movie's premise is based on a real New York Times article by Ian Fraser, and the 1990s footage moment in the film almost mirrors the exact decade that article came out. A neat bit of the source material reflecting its own history back at itself. Visually, the film does a great job translating cartoon prop logic into physical space. The classic throwable hole, one of the genre's oldest toys, opens the movie in its first few minutes, then returns later as a can of black paint that becomes a portal, leading straight into a tunnel with a train barreling through it. It's the kind of detail that shows this movie isn't just borrowing old material, it genuinely understands it and pushes it somewhere more dramatic. There's something worth sitting with here if you think about it too hard. Cartoon logic's constant explosions, once placed into a realistic setting, start to carry an uncomfortable resemblance to terrorism. The climax with the dynamite pedestal, Coyote setting off a metal detector loaded with explosives, strip away the cartoon coating and that's a public building getting blown up. But wrapped in cartoon logic, it plays as spectacle instead of horror. The film wisely doesn't dig into that angle directly. Just uses it as a running gag. The lawyer's car keeps getting wrecked or exploded, but it's there if you're paying attention. The legal back and forth, brief as it is smarter than it needed to be. Both sides have a point. The Acme products really are defective, but Coyote is also using them outside their intended purpose. It's not a perfect debate, but it's enough to keep the film from flattening the conflict into pure good guy versus pure bad guy. The practical stunt work is another strong point. There's real physical weight to watching a human actor go through cartoon-style chaos, from Rube Goldberg contraptions to getting launched out of a motel and into a pool, weight that a full green screen CGI approach could never fully replicate. And when the film does lean into CGI for the animated characters, especially in some of the near-photorealistic moments, the quality is genuinely impressive. My biggest regret is the secondary villain with the cartoon control gloves. He shows up in a genuinely striking scene, evoking a Roger Rabbit-style human villain using toon powers, but only gets that one scene before disappearing. Maybe that's intentional, less is more, but I was still left wanting more of him. The way the film handles the other Looney Tunes characters, framed as decades have passed versions of themselves, is also a fun choice. Granny now has, and then doesn't have, a husband. Sylvester is alone because Tweety's been kidnapped. Daffy ends up in what's essentially a literal Looney house. Bugs Bunny gets exactly one scene, rendered entirely in 2D. Less is more choice that turns him into more of a fleeting legend than an actual character in the story. And the ending, a massive Rube Goldberg machine built from every prop that's appeared throughout the film, used not to blow up the courthouse over losing the case, but to gently drop a cage over the villains, is the clearest proof that the movie respects the rules it set for itself from the very beginning. No shortcuts. No taking the easy way out. The real emotional twist lands with the Coyote Roadrunner thread. Roadrunner is almost entirely absent for the whole movie. Neither side can catch them, not even a full-scale military operation, only for Roadrunner to show up on their own terms in the final moments, acknowledging that they actually care about Coyote as a friend. That flips the entire decades-long chase dynamic into something with real meaning. Coyote loses the case, but he gains friends, both human and Roadrunner. And that ends up being the real victory of this movie. This is a film that blends classic slapstick chaos with genuine emotional depth, and more importantly, it stands as living proof that handcrafted animation, one that respects its source material, can still win. even when the studio that made it turns its back, even while competing against a wave of formulaic CGI dominating the box office. If the industry needs proof that investing in craft over safe formulas still pays off, Coyote vs. ACME is that proof. I'd strongly encourage everyone to go see this in theaters, not just because of the journey it took to get here, but because it earns that support on its own terms. I'd love to hear your thoughts, which scene stood out to you, or what part of the behind-the-scenes story you'd want me to dig into next. See you in the next video.